Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ray's a little under the weather today.
He is a little nice summer sickness, the best time to be sick.
Yes.
Oh,
I hate those.
Is that's we call that Havana syndrome, right? That like fun summer sickness you get.
They're saying that Biden got Havana syndrome by the
Yeah.
FSB, the energy weapon.
Totally fine with that.
This current condition is explained by this, or
Yeah, because then on his proof of life rally, he was like, "And I get back up again."
Yeah.
And
Yeah, the Dems invented
And,
the proof of life rally.
yeah.
Last week. That's
nice,
awesome.
nice.
They painted him orange, like you do when you have an open casket rally,
Yeah,
like that, and just let those Victorian children work them bellows for our free listeners.
they moved up
need to go to the
into
Patreon to understand
steam
that
engine for this.
Yes. Yeah.
So everything is well.
Yeah, everything's fine.
Everything is fine.
All right. Welcome to The Empire Never Ended. Although you wouldn't know it from looking at it, but here we are, Boris, Fritz, and Ray.
You wouldn't know that it never ended?
You wouldn't know that.
Or you'd have thought that it...
It looks like it's ending now. It's kind of got that vibe to it,
okay,
you know? But well, we'll see. We'll see if we still have a job.
I will have a job.
Yeah? Even if the Empire...
Yeah, I mean, these guys, look at us. Like, we're now barely in the 50s.
Oh, God, you're right. Oh,
When the Empire ends, then we'll
Barely in the 50s
I'll be in the
and-
Comoros.
Oh, we'll just say the Empire ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. We also...
And this is the second time we are barely in the 50s.
Dude, we're gonna need another round of American.
Oh, for
fascist
sure,
history,
at least
for sure.
one.
I'm coming up with like a backlog now of stuff that I would have liked to have covered about the 19th century, but I think we are gonna not go back there for a while. I hope.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. You never know with that tricky long 19th century.
I mean, if the next arc is a Balkan one, then I don't know.
yeah, okay. That,
How can we avoid the 19th
Or even any
century?
kind of European one.
Yeah. Well, today
Mm-hmm.
we're giving Ray the floor to just spin up some of the greatest of all times here.
Goats.
Of Tenopod, one after the other.
Lots of goats, yes.
Can't wait.
Yeah. This
Cannot
is
We have
a
the-
star-studded episode.
We have the goat of the commanders of the American Nazi Party, for example.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be Rockwell, the commander.
Yes. I mean, Cale was also the commander.
Catches the eye.
I think the third one, now the leader of the new order, also calls himself the commander.
Well, sure, it's a traditional title.
Yeah.
You know. How big's their hat these days, I wonder?
I think they don't have hats.
Do they
have skull masks. I
they
guess.
keep the corncob pipe? I think is a better look than the skull mask.
Yeah, I agree, actually. I agree.
But he's Rockwell is, by the way, only mentioned here.
Yeah, he's just one.
But a lot of people are mentioned, you will see.
Yeah.
So we are talking about Pedro del Valle.
Who had his turn to be mentioned way back in like Arc 3 briefly.
Yeah.
And we always said, someday
Mm-hmm.
we'll do it.
Someday is now.
The someday is here. We did it.
It is here, yes.
You tell him, Ray.
And it was honestly like an easier episode to prepare because I basically used one essay. So thanks to the late Kevin Coogan who wrote it.
Yeah.
Who's helped us a lot on our show.
Definitely.
He did.
With Yaki, I think, specifically.
Yeah. So most of the things I will talk about today is from an essay by Kevin Coogan, with the title of which is The Defenders of the American Constitution and the League of Empire Loyalists, the first post-war Anglo-American revolts against the One World Order.
All right. Empire loyalists.
Those are the Brits.
Oh.
He compares the Del Valle group, which is the Defenders of the American Constitution,
Yeah.
with the League of Empire Loyalists,
Okay.
who were in close contact.
Nice.
Yeah.
You want to give us the full name?
Yeah. So the
good
guy
general here?
the guy that we're talking about is Pedro Augusto José del Valle Barcay Muñoz,
Nailed it.
and
Nailed
he was born in 1893 in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and he died in the 70s when he was 80-something years old.
Okay, all right.
So the Defenders of the American Constitution is the group that was headed by Del Valle. And it's interesting because it's, as Coogan points out, it's like one of the first groups that really made this conspiracy theory of the New World Order, or as they used to call it, One World Order, their kind of primary emphasis.
Oh, whoa.
In specifically concentrating on the story of the UN.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, this is really some of the best stuff for me for Tenet Pod. When you get to the like origin source of some of the most classic conspiracy.
Yeah.
Boris just said that like I opened up a fine scotch.
Yeah.
The French champagne.
His face just lit up when you brought up
Known for
UN
its
conspiracies.
excellence.
Yeah.
Well, listen, the John Birch Society was founded in 1958, and so was Liberty Lobby.
Right.
But the DAC, the Valle Group, was founded in 1953, so 5 years before that. Those groups.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for pulling us back to the 50s. I don't feel done with it yet. You know, I don't
No,
want to leave
no,
it.
we'll never be done.
It's so good. It's so full
Yeah,
and
there's
rich.
a lot of good stuff there. In the
And
I-
it's very familiar.
I see now. Del Valle died in 1978 when he was 85 years old.
Okay.
So Del Valle was born in, as I said, 1893 in Puerto Rico when it was still a part of the Spanish Empire. And his father was a surgeon who was educated in the University of Seville, also at the Sorbonne and Johns Hopkins University.
Damn.
So he was also served as a Inspector General for the Spanish Empire.
Okay. So my question was going to be, was he rich? And I think you just answered it there.
I mean, for sure, yes.
Yeah.
And very well connected. So they moved to United States at some point.
Presumably after the Spanish-American War.
I think so. So in exactly 1900, Pedro del Valle became an American citizen.
Okay.
They moved to Maryland. So he graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, and then joined the Marine Corps. He first saw action in 1916 when he participated in the capture of Santo Domingo. In World War I, he led a Marine Corps detachment on the USS Texas that deployed with the British Grand Fleet. In the late 1920s, Del Valle was stationed in Haiti before becoming active in the war against Augusto Sandino in Nicaragua. And he later reported that as a young... Now here we can see the beginnings of his later affliction. So he reported that as a young officer, I found everywhere evidence of communist organization commencing with Sandino's Red Bandits.
Well, okay, but fair enough.
I mean, let's just that's a pretty illustrious career to begin with for 20th century U.S. interventions in warfare.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got
he was there. Yeah,
Latin America, the occupation of Haiti, which is particularly
Nicaragua.
He must have been acquainted at some point with Lawrence Dennis. Had to be.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
Well, probably. Yeah. I mean, listen to this.
Okay.
So next, he served in Havana as an intelligence officer under Admiral Charles Freeman, following the 1933 Cuban Sergeants' Revolt. Then he was assigned to Rome, where he served as an assistant naval attaché in the U.S. Embassy from 35 to 37.
So he's moving out of the strictly military role and into the intelligence force.
Military intelligence.
Because attaché is basically an intelligence position.
Yeah. He was a military intelligence guy.
Yeah.
So this is...
And he's in Rome in 37.
Yes.
So already at the point when the U.S. the relationship of U.S. industrialists to the Italian fascists was starting to sour, or had soured more or less at this point. But he's kind of coming in at that point.
He came there in 35, ended in 37.
Oh, okay. All right.
But
so Mussolini was still hot shit when he got there. Okay.
And his relations with Italian fascists did not sour.
No, I
at all.
imagine. I mean, if we're talking
why
about
else
him.
would we talk about him otherwise? Yeah.
I mean, this is especially amazing. So he accompanied the Italian armed forces in the conquest of Ethiopia as a U.S. military observer, and as an observer who received the Order of the Crown of Italy, the Colonial Order of the Star of Italy, and the Italian Bronze Medal for military valor.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Damn.
So during his stay in Ethiopia with the fascist military, he also became good friends with many Italian generals.
Okay.
We'll come back to that a little bit later. So when he came back to the U.S., he attended Army War College and worked at the U.S. Marine Corps headquarters as an executive officer in the Division of Plans and Policies. So during the Second World War, he led the 11th Marine Regiment of the 1st Marine Division in the defense of the Guadalcanal, where he earned the Legion of Merit. Then he returned to the Pacific in April of 1944, this time as a commanding general of the 3rd Artillery, 3rd Amphibious Corps, and fought the Japanese on Guam.
Wow, okay.
These
are pretty big.
Yes.
The Guadalcanal,
Yeah.
Guam, yeah.
Did you want to say something?
No, I have a make a peppercorn in my tooth. I'm trying to
Okay.
get it out.
I thought you had a technical...
I'm not flirting with you. If that's
Okay, fine. So his crowning achievement came when, as commanding general of the 1st Marine Division, he played a critical role in the capture of Okinawa in June 1945, for which he was awarded the Distinguished Service Medal. It is said that the Japanese generals committed seppuku after this because Del Valle and his Marines so thoroughly defeated the Japanese.
I mean, that sounds like a big achievement, but it would be a lot bigger of an achievement if he like beat the Dutch and the Dutch general committed seppuku. You know what I mean? Like, okay,
Yeah,
it's something, but you know.
You're right. So after the war, he again returned to Washington, D.C., serving first as the U.S. Marine Corps Inspector General, and from 46 to 40, and from 46 to 48 as the Director of Personnel for the Marines. And then he retired from the military.
Okay.
Allegedly.
Sure.
Also, it is known, I think this Coogan doesn't mention, but some other researchers did mention that already during this time he was connected with the American fascists. So he was a close friend of the anti-Semitic propagandist James True.
Oh my God. So he's like that's America First Incorporated.
Yeah. So this is 1930s. He was also friends with George Deatherage, or whatever his fucking name
That's
is.
also Knights of the White Camellia, also affiliated with America First Incorporated. Of course, for new listeners, that's the original incarnation of the America First movement.
And Deatherage is a Nazi.
Oh yeah, also he's a Nazi. He looks like he's the guy that looks like the face melty Nazi from Indiana Jones.
Yes, that's right.
So Del Valle was distributing the pamphlets from the Deatherage Knights of the White Chameleon that you just mentioned, but also from Pelly's Silver Shirts.
Fantastic.
Wow.
He was
These are all my old. It's like going to a high school reunion. You know, this is ARC 3 graduates here.
So he was so anti-Semitic that even the U.S. military had some issues with him,
That's
especially in 1941. And it is mentioned that he had some anti-patriotic and anti-Semitic statements. Anti-patriotic, I guess, means pro-Axis, I guess.
I'm assuming it was something like,
I want to be a Nazi.
Yeah.
They put him on the Pacific Theater for a reason, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah, like with Mel Gibson's dad or whatever.
Yeah. So there were 3 separate investigations on him because of these statements.
Okay.
One by the FBI, one by the Office of Naval Intelligence, and the third one by the War Office's Military Intelligence Department. So he was investigated. And in 1946, he met President Truman because some senator suggested to Truman that Del Valle should be appointed the governor of Puerto Rico, because at that point they were still being appointed. And after some resistance from local politicians in Puerto Rico, Del Valle gave up on this idea. But he was extremely well connected, as you can see. He was meeting presidents and so on.
Yeah. Well, I bet he was also buddies with our whole American Legion crowd. Like he's probably bumping elbows with the Roosevelt kids.
He's World War I veteran, so I mean, he cannot. No,
I mean, he's a decorated war hero, lieutenant general,
Yeah.
the Marine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we know if he was doing any of these preparation camps? Did Coogan cover that?
No.
Be interesting to find out if he's got that pedigree too.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It wouldn't surprise me.
not at all. No, he's definitely the type. He's probably leading them. Shit.
So after he was retired from the Marines, he talked to father's friend who was the head of the ITT, and he got the job with ITT.
ITT, International Telephone and Telegraph.
He got a job with the International Telephone and Telegraph. The
Yeah.
ITT. That's the way for me.
Yeah,
he
directly
said.
from the head of the company. I mean,
Great.
because he was well connected.
That he said I could.
Yes, and he became the representative ITT in the Middle East. So he had an office in Cairo, Egypt, and he in this function he visited Istanbul, Damascus, Beirut, Athens, and so on.
And this is post-war.
This is post-war.
This is like 50s or late 40s.
This is already 40s. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's in a fun position if you wanted to.
Yeah.
If you wanted to be friends with U.S. intelligence agencies, that'd be a pretty nice little tour.
I mean, he was military intelligence.
Yeah,
Oh, well,
he had
that's it.
previously been.
Yeah,
Oh, he's retired.
yeah,
Don't you know what they say? You always leave the agency.
yeah.
And of course, once a Marine, always a Marine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he then he worked in the ITT's Rome office and
Mhm.
then relocated to Buenos Aires, Argentina,
Mhm.
where he became president of ITT for all South America.
Huh. A few other friends of ours on the show went from Rome to Buenos
I
Aires.
know, right? And Egypt as well.
Yeah, and Egypt. Yeah. All the hot spots.
So he was.
It's going to turn out. Sorry, it's going to turn out he was like friends with Muftich doing.
I'm
like,
waiting for something like this too. Yeah.
doing like
mean,
hypnosis in Gaza.
I wouldn't be like, okay, he was in Damascus when important Nazis lived there.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he had contacts.
Yeah.
So he was also connected in the late 40s with a very notorious magazine in the States, anti-Semitic one called Common Sense.
Oh, right,
That,
of course.
whose was that? Shit. Common Sense that's not Coughlin's, is it?
Some
No.
McGinley is the guy
Okay.
heading it. And so some of the letters that Del Valle wrote to Common Sense at that time to the editors and founders
Yeah.
state things like,
Thomas Paine. Sorry.
mhm,
Oh well, that's the book. That's the book they're making fun of.
yeah.
Yes, it's named after the. Paine.
I was wondering who published this magazine. Is this whatever
yeah.
McGinley guy?
Yeah.
Because it just we haven't done a Common Sense episode, but it rings such a strong bell because so many of our people have published in it. I think there's even TFP stuff in Common Sense.
And also remember, I found that archive of them, physical ones. Remember, I was taking pictures of them and sending it
you
to
found
you.
the
Yeah,
actual, the precious objects themselves.
So Del Valle was writing in his
Yeah,
letters
poop.
at the time things like, if the Truman welfare state triumphs, we shall lose our republic and emerge a very sad socialist oligarchy.
Yeah, Truman, famous socialist.
Yes,
Hmm.
which will shortly be overthrown by communist dictatorship. Then he was saying things like, I have warned Senator McCarthy because I know his life is in danger.
Oh.
He writes, treason is everywhere about us, and I do not believe that we have any chance unless some strong military person is able to seize power by means of a coup d'etat and take the communist bull by the horns right at home. And in a letter from Buenos Aires, Del Valle said, if the Truman government were not completely in the power of the Zionist Marxist minority, we should not have any difficulty in getting the United States to leave the UN as long as Russia remained a member.
God, I love that. We're in that part where Truman is a commie. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
So he's like in this, like this is late 40s, and he's talking about Zionist Marxist minority ruling America and the UN as the enemy.
Yeah.
So very progressive.
Yeah, well, he's ahead of his time by like 2-3 years.
So his explicit anti-Semitism made Daddy's friend, the head of the ITT, uncomfortable. So he left ITT in 1951.
Listen, Pedro, your dad and I go a long way.
Yeah.
But you're a Nazi, son.
You're a little. We respect your service to the country.
Yes.
That you're fucking crazy.
See you at Thanksgiving, kid.
So this is now very interesting. While still in Argentina, Del Valle regularly wrote letters to Pentagon and CIA and urged them to create a new organization under the command of Joint Chiefs of Staff to wage guerrilla warfare behind Soviet and Chinese lines.
Oh,
Okay.
all right. Yeah.
Is this before 48?
Now we're cooking.
This is
49, rather?
This is before 49, yes.
He is cooking.
Yeah, this
He's
is
like all the way on this
This
shit.
is all, yeah,
right.
yeah,
Way to
before.
go, Pedro.
And he offered to lead this organization.
Of course. I mean, that
Yeah.
was definitely implied. Yeah.
So because of this, he received an invitation from Admiral Forrest Sherman and Chief of Naval Operations
Okay.
to visit Washington and talk with him.
Yeah.
Del Valle did this, and then Sherman, they said he's not available, but you can talk to the head of CIA.
Roscoe Hillen Cotterbottom? What was his name?
Walter Battlesmith.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah.
What is it? Walter
Okay.
Battlesmith?
Yes.
Yeah, Battlesmith. Yeah.
He was the new head of CIA.
Yeah, he replaced Hillenbottom Cotter, the 14th.
Yeah, he replaced Admiral Roscoe Hillenkotter.
That's it.
Yeah. So there was a kind of a misunderstanding. The Walter Battlesmith was like, great ideas,
Yeah.
but why don't you become the head of CIA station in Japan? This is a job we have for you.
Mm-hmm.
And also, this CIA guy had a false idea that somehow Del Valle didn't like General MacArthur.
Oh.
And told him, like, we need someone to basically control MacArthur in Japan.
That's not this guy.
This is not this guy. He
No.
was very offended, and he promptly informed Battlesmith that he considered MacArthur the ablest general and statesman the country possessed.
Yeah, he probably wanted MacArthur to, coup and lead the country.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
So from this point on, the CIA and Del Valle didn't like each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will physically challenge you to a duel.
So, for example, this is one of the letters. This is from 51, in which Del Valle talks about some of his ideas. I'm convinced that we should immediately create a general headquarters in the United States for the purpose of initiating immediate action by anti-communist operating forces, not only in China and the Far East generally, but also in the Middle East, in Russia, in West Europe, Australasia, India, and North and South America. There is a vast reservoir of refugees from all these places, where the Politburo has its iron heel, who are constantly coming to our embassies all over the world, trying to enlist in the anti-communist cause. Certainly, if we were so fortunate as to be allowed to go back on active duty to organize such a movement, and was able to pick a decent staff, we could begin making it hot for the rulers of Russia within 3 months, and within a year, I venture to predict they would be too busy at home to provoke any more wars of the kind we have been having since 45.
So this dude definitely had like dinner with Pavlich while he was in the vast numbers of refugees coming to our embassies asking for our help.
Yeah.
Legitimate governments in exile.
Yeah.
I also
Anti-communist ones, yes.
I had the Green Berets theme song rising in the back of my mind towards the end of that.
Yeah.
bit there.
Mhm. So Coogan places this conflict between Del Valle and CIA in the context of the conflict between the isolationist and the so-called internationalist wing of the Republican Party.
Mhm.
The internationalist so-called wing of the Republican Party was led by groups like the Council on Foreign Relations
Yep.
and the Ford Foundation.
That's the dullest boys.
Yes, who they did not like at all.
Mm.
And the culmination of this struggle was the 1952 GOP convention, when Senator Robert Taft was defeated by Dwight Eisenhower. Taft was the representative of the isolationist
Mhm.
wing of the party.
Mhm.
So they were defeated in this internal struggle in the party. So Del Valle attempted to organize a network of hard right organizations to galvanize public opinion against the internationalist elite. In a letter to a right-winger, Jane Graham, in 51, he said, "We must organize the citizens in each state as vigilantes against sabotage and other forms of treason, then link them up in some national headquarters."
Word.
So at that time, he had his hopes high for a group called America Plus Incorporated, which was a Los Angeles-based group that operated in 14 states.
Interesting.
And
I don't think I've ever
America
even heard
Plus.
America
No
Plus.
way.
No.
No, so
Sounds like an insurance company.
No.
he wrote to the head of America Plus Incorporated.
Plus what, I wonder?
I'm going to suggest that we have a body of Minutemen or vigilantes,
Okay.
which in fact all your members are. While your movement is entirely political, the vigilantes could, in addition, have a semi-military purpose in checking the violence and sabotage which the enemy constantly perpetrates in our country.
Damn. Okay.
So he's probably thinking, this is kind of reminding me a little bit of Legion logic, but he's probably thought they went soft by now.
Huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
You might be right. Because eventually they had to fall in line behind the whole Pearl Harbor myth. You know,
we need another, we need guys to go and rough people up.
Yeah.
He might be still using some of the infrastructure and context.
Well, listen, California Legion, what frame am I thinking of now? I'm thinking now of the 50s. The California Legion did have connections with a group that was calling themselves, I think they were calling themselves the American Fascist Party or the New American Fascist Party, but we talked about it in the Legion episodes. But California is a great place for like the Legion to hook up with real Nazis, not just your typical Americanist fascists.
Right.
So exactly as Boris just said, he wrote to Douglas MacArthur himself with these suggestions in 51, and he proposed directly the creation of the Minutemen of America. And he said its most important functions would include intelligence, operations, supply, finance, public relations, and personnel. The central authority of the Minutemen would keep the members advised of sabotage, intended sabotage, and all subversive activities. At such time, as appropriate, the necessary action will be taken to supplement the work of the FBI in bringing subversives to justice, and especially in forestalling them in their nefarious activity wherever possible. In his draft article for the Minutemen, Del Valle said it would be organized with one squad leader and 4 men each at the smallest local level, into platoons of 1 platoon leader and 2 or more squads each at the next largest level, into companies of 100 men led by a centurion, commandos led by commanders of 2 or more companies, into legions of 2 or more commandos led by a legionary, and finally at state level into divisions led by a state councilor.
This is really interesting to hear, actually, because I've heard this laid out before, but not by Del Valle, but by one of these fucking plotters that were doing one of those like handful of weird little right-wing half-coup attempts back in the 50s, 60s. I remember reading this, actually. Something very similar to this.
I mean, this seems like a pretty well thought out breakdown. I mean, he's a general in the Marine Corps.
He does know what he's talking about.
This stuff seems to have stuck.
But I can just also imagine him like sitting, he is retired at this point. He's like sitting behind some desk with like a glass of scotch, and he's like, and so that way we will need a platoon leader of
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So this draft of the Minutemen also includes some denunciation of the UN. I won't bore you with too much of this, but I want to read it now just for you to get a feel of.
But I love the anti-UN stuff.
Yeah.
All right, hit it.
It's classic.
Okay.
Wait for the cue.
Further to corrupt, misinterpret, and weaken our national fundamental political philosophy, we have become a member of a huge international aggregation known as the United Nations, into which the United States of America has surrendered a large part of its sovereignty into the hands of heterogeneous conglomeration of representatives of all races, colors, and states of enlightenment, most of whom cannot properly represent their peoples because they did not select them, and none of whose interests exactly coincide with ours. In the United Nations Christianity, the basis of our form of government can only with difficulty make its voice heard in the modern Tower of Babel amidst the din and clangor of clashing materialistic interests, including those of Soviet Russia, our sworn enemy and protagonist of Antichrist.
Nice.
Damn, boy can write.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. So,
do we have his voice anywhere? I'm curious of other.
That was a bit more colorful than I was expecting, actually.
Yeah.
I was in my head, he was more of like the guy that you were making, this like.
The sworn enemy of our country.
No, well, more simple.
By the way, he wrote books. He wrote a book, Roman Eagles over Ethiopia, about his time with the Italian fascists.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And he also has an autobiography, a memoir. So, Fritz, I'm looking at you. He's super.
You're doing the episode now.
He's super Catholic.
Oh, well, okay. Fine.
Oh, yeah.
This is why I thought he came up during the TFP shit. I think he was in there
so.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
He's super Catholic.
All right. Well, sold. I got to do some Catholic house cleaning pretty soon. Actually, we got to talk about some shit.
So, in 1953, after they met in Washington's Army Navy Club, Del Valle and the boys founded the Defenders of the American Constitution.
Nice.
Some of the boys were Lieutenant Colonel John H. Kaufman, Lieutenant Colonel Eugene Cowles Pomeroy.
Calls who?
Pomeroy.
You can call me whatever you want.
Yeah. Also, there were other guys here, mostly, all of military men, basically. Sorry. One of which was called Brigadier General Bonerfeller.
That's a name you gotta earn.
Yeah.
If you are the boner feller,
he's felling boners.
He's felling one boner after another, man. This guy.
Yeah.
In this country? Goddamn right.
So Bonerfeller was the chairman of the executive council of DAC.
Yeah.
There was also Major General Claire Chenot.
Oh, Claire Chenot.
Yeah.
I'm sure a West Point student named Claire had a fine experience.
He looks brutal, I have to say.
Yeah.
He was a member of the pro-Taiwan China lobby and later founded the so-called Air America.
Yeah, from the, what do you call it? The Flying Tigers or whatever. There was insane, insane people did that. That was like a volunteer Air Force.
Yeah,
it's pretty hardcore stuff.
Nuts. Totally bonkers. Yeah.
So they were like one of the things they were.
Sorry, we didn't really say much about Air America, but if you don't know, this is CIA heroin trade shit.
Yeah,
this is like pretty dark
in Southeast Asia
mobster shit. Yeah.
This is kind of a scary group of guys. I think any kind of these
psychotic
old military brass at this time when they've just come out of. I'm assuming a lot of these guys had careers like he did. Which is, everything from, major military operations in both world wars to like, regime changes and colonial occupations and the like. These are like scary motherfuckers.
You're talking about the Air America fuckers, right?
All the guys that are in this, this Defenders of the American Constitution board.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the things that made them really uncomfortable was the so-called Genocide Convention, which they made up.
Made them uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's the thing. I guess the Genocide Convention of the UN or something like this, which would allow U.S. citizen without his consent because he has caused mental discomfort to a certain minority to be deported for trial in a foreign land by a foreign court, and thus be denied our guarantees of free speech, trial by a jury, and habeas corpus. So they were very worried about this thing.
Yeah, they shouldn't have been.
Yeah,
that shit wasn't going to happen.
Genocide Convention is 1948.
Yeah. And you say this, but they became known, the DAC, in 1953 when a case became very known called the Keefe case.
Keefe, all right.
Yes, that was a U.S. soldier who got drunk and stole a cab in Paris.
Nice.
And French authorities decided they will try him in France instead of the huge giving him back to the Americans. And this made the DAC guys outraged.
So not exactly the Genocide Convention, but a guy
if
did
they
steal
do
a car.
They can do it to him.
I see. Yeah.
They could do it to any of us in this board that probably did a lot of things that would qualify as genocide.
Yes. Yeah. And are intending to do more.
This is a crime?
Tie my hand behind my back.
Shut up, Bright Eyes, and listen to me.
By accident, I went into a Nazi bar in Munich.
Whoops. How'd that go?
They were kind.
Yeah.
They realized we
That's how
were
they get you.
freaks and didn't want to do anything. I mean, it's like the mom and pop Nazi bar.
Oh, sure.
It was
Yeah,
like, it was like lots of alcoholics.
Yeah. I'm sure. I mean, look, if they're like older people, they know that the arc of time is long, and they probably thought they looked at you guys and thought, "We'll take care of them later anyway. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
No hurry." You know.
they were kind of too kind.
How'd you figure out it was a Nazi bar?
Nazi stickers at the bar.
No, that's a big one, especially in Germany.
Yeah,
Hard to get away with that in your
yeah.
average
Like,
bar.
Behind the bar, like
Yeah. Like the employees put it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had this sort of mini version of the experience of National Youth Alliance Republicans figuring out that they were actually in a Nazi party.
Yeah.
Were they playing Nazi music or anything?
No, there was no music, thankfully, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember any music.
It's in their hearts. You know?
Yeah.
That constant drum beat.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe that should be a possible merch idea for us. It's just John Wayne's face and the words "okay." I think it might work.
We would have to put John Wayne's face.
He'd have to be in like a Flemish SS uniform, and it might send the wrong message overall.
So the DAC and their allies in the Senate argued for the so-called Bricker Amendment to the Constitution. Which would permanently curb those starry-eyed dreamers who are obsessed with the illusion that we can solve all of our problems and emerge into a shining new world by just eliminating all national governments and having in their place one big super duper dictatorship to rule the brave new world.
I, for one, like all of my serious texts to have super duper.
Yeah.
One super duper world government.
This is, by the way, the quote from a DAC ally, which was the far-right news bulletin of the Cinema Education Guild.
Okay.
Oh,
all right.
So in 1953, there were hearings before Congress, and pro-Bricker congressman attacked Secretary of State John Foster Dulles.
All right.
Was present, and who told them basically, like, do you realize if you vote for this, we can't have NATO? So yeah, it was the Bricker Amendment was defeated by one vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting moment.
Yeah. So in that around that time, Del Valle ran for the governor of Maryland and failed miserably in the Republican primary. The DAC started publishing their own bulletin, or newsletter monthly, which was called Task Force. So the first issue of Task Force appeared in May 1954, and in the second issue, it featured Del Valle's open letter to the American people, in which he said, "We have seen the United Nations fail to promote peaceful intercourse between its member nations and to become a dangerous international soapbox for the Kremlin. We have seen spies and saboteurs of the Kremlin penetrate almost every branch of our own government."
Okay. All right. This is super familiar. We were just here. This is the John Birch Society thing before the John Birch Society.
Yeah. It is reported that there are over 5 million illegally living in our country. We have seen our every effort to support the real anti-communist nations, nationalist China, South Korea, Germany, and Spain, sabotaged by foreign influences. The importance of the sinister United Nations has been amply demonstrated. Mere numerical majorities of peoples can override our will, and can, through the devious means of treaties and conventions forced upon us, open the way for the surrender of our precious Constitution and Bill of Rights. The beast of the Kremlin sits in the highest councils, together with some of its puppets. Yet Spain, the one country which had defeated communism within its borders in a bloody conflict, is not invited to be a member. He loves Spain.
Well, yeah.
I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know if he ever claimed to have some kind of noble lineage to the Spanish crown? He is a Pedro.
No, I don't know about this, but I know that a countess was one of the primary financiers of the GAC.
Wait, what, did she have an Italian name? Did she live in Florida?
She had maintained homes in Massachusetts and Palm Beach, in fact, and her name was Rosalind Wood Guardabassi.
Guardabassi, we already brought up.
Yes.
Guardabassi was also Revelo Oliver's primary funder when he was running around.
So she was just a loaded...
Yeah. Guardabassi is her husband's last name.
Yeah, who was declared count by none other than Mussolini himself on a visit to Florida.
Wow.
Yeah, not many counts were made in Florida, but there's at least one and a countess.
So there are some contradictions here.
Oh, by the way, neighbors of Mar-a-Lago, not far off from Mar-a-Lago. And we discussed this before, but Mar-a-Lago's dining room, Trump's dining room, used to be called the Mussolini dining room because it was modeled off of Mussolini's dining room.
So some contradictions exist here with Del Valle, although they are probably not contradictions when you talk about, especially when you talk about post-war American fascists, is that on the one hand, he's like regularly denouncing big government for limiting individual freedom, even calling for the abolition of the IRS and the Tennessee Valley Authority.
Yeah, okay.
But on the other hand, he's a big fan of Mussolini.
Yeah.
So not only that, but you know who he's good friends with?
Oh, wait, you got to let us guess this one. Did we do a full ep on him, or is he a side character?
I was about to say, because there's a lot of hot, heavy hitters in this decade.
We definitely didn't do an episode.
Okay. All right. Give me another hint. Category.
Italian.
Category Italian. We didn't do an episode. That's going to be a hard one. All right. Hit me.
He was good friends with the Black Prince, Junio Valerio Borghese.
The one Italian we haven't done an episode on.
Yes. Who was a big part of Gladio, of course.
Yeah.
And friends with Evola and wrote the foreword for the Riding the Tiger Italian edition first.
Wow.
Right.
So they were friends and they knew each other from Ethiopia.
Okay.
That makes the sense. I was about to say, so I'd imagine that friendship goes back to his period, his time in Italy.
Well, and then went forward to his time again in Italy.
Yes. So Borghese was also the first leader of MSI, the Movimento Sociale Italiano, the neo-fascist party. So Del Valle argued that America should back Eastern European governments in exile in order to encourage so-called fascist groups. He writes, so-called fascist groups.
So he definitely had dinner with Pavilion.
To build a new underground should the Soviet Union overrun Europe militarily. Yeah. So he's basically calling for Gladio.
He's calling for Operation Bloodstone too. I mean, he's calling for
Do you know if he had connections to any of those big like kind of umbrella groups for the like emigres? Like was he in contact with like, I don't know, Banderists and...
He was in contact with white Russians, I will mention.
Okay, so he's running around in circles that we know pretty well, even from the last arc, actually.
Yeah.
Some of these post-Bloodstone, American captive nation peoples.
Yeah.
A lot of Radio Free Europe stuff, I bet.
He actually might not be in good relations with Banderists. I will tell you soon why.
Okay. It's interesting, too, because if he had this antipathy towards the CIA, I wonder if that might complicate some of those relationships, too.
I'm sure, yes. Yeah. So he was also friends with a Marquis, a Spanish one who lived in Spain and was close to the Franco regime. And generally Del Valle had good relations with Franco Spain.
What does a Marquis do exactly?
Well, you know what? He's the head of a movement called Active United Christians.
Okay. Sounds like a Marquis thing.
Which is a right-wing Catholic movement.
All right.
They met in Spain in 1952 and also tried to organize, the two of them, the Marquis and Del Valle, tried to organize a worldwide Christian movement for the purposes of anti-communism. And they had some ideas of financing from Arab nations, interesting, and far-right Texas millionaires as well.
Come on, Muftich. I know he's in there somewhere. And far-right Texas millionaires
Yeah.
That oil money.
Yeah.
All right.
So he also, Del Valle offered to U.S. To become the first U.S. ambassador to Spain once they recognize Franco.
That sounds like a perfect choice, to be honest.
Yeah. So he was Catholic, but Coogan says that he didn't like so much Nordic racialism and Nazi ideology. But I don't really see much evidence that he didn't like. I mean, he had his reservations, but I would say he liked it a lot.
Sure.
I mean, in some way at least. So, for example, he had relations both with the National States Rights Party and with the American Nazi Party.
Okay.
So, in the letter to a California organizer for the National States Rights Party, Del Valle shares some of his views on Hitler.
Sorry, this would now be what, like the 70s?
62.
62. Oh, okay. All right.
So Del Valle writes to this guy to impress him. I knew Mussolini personally and served with his forces in Ethiopia as U.S. observer. I never met Hitler, but lived in Germany under his creation and believe he might somehow have fought free of his bosses and created a free world far better than the one we now live in. But let this be known. Hitler was sponsored and financed by the same house of Rothschild bankers who eventually liquidated him. So,
okay. Gotcha.
Hitler was too Jewish.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's, wow.
Yeah.
All right, Pedro.
So he, starting from the late 1950s, he was in regular correspondence with George Lincoln Rockwell, at the time already head of American Nazi Party. So they liked each other very much. And Rockwell invited Del Valle on numerous times to come to their headquarters and address the brown shirts, the stormtroopers.
Yeah.
And Del Valle on one occasion at least agreed to do that.
I wonder where he slept that night.
Yeah, in a hotel. I
would assume.
Yeah. We don't, Coogan says there is no evidence that he actually did it, but he agreed to do it.
Okay.
He said something like, let me see. Your kind invitation to come to, he's speaking, writing to Rockwell now.
Yeah.
Your kind invitation to come to speak to your young patriots is an honor, and I shall be happy to confer with you and retired Admiral John Crommelin on the subject of unified effort.
Well, that actually leads into my question. I was going to ask if he also did any stuff with, like, what are they called? WUNS, the World Union of National Socialists.
Well, that's ANP.
That's what I'm saying. But did Del Valle fuck around with that? I mean, you know,
I don't know.
British connections or anything.
Well, we'll talk about the British connection.
Oh yeah, okay, great.
British connection has something to do with that.
Yeah, that's the empire part, huh?
The empire loyalists.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dun, 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 dun.
So while Del Valle was still an ITT executive in Buenos Aires in 1949, he became involved with a group called the Suvarov Union, which was an Argentine-based network of white Russian exiles.
Oh,
okay.
Suvarov Union was led by a guy called General Boris Smyslovsky-Holmston.
Love it when we have a Boris.
A former white Russian officer who
I know this name. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Former white Russian officer who had fought with the Bolsheviks during the Civil War. He then joined the German army as Colonel von Regenau.
Yeah.
And led a fierce guerrilla warfare campaign behind Soviet lines during World War II.
Sorry, is he a Vlasov army guy?
I don't think he's Vlasov proper.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
It does sound familiar.
Don't quote me on that. I know this name of
Smyslovsky-Holmston told Del Valle that he had some 10,000 supporters worldwide who were eager to open up offensive operations in Siberia with American backing should the Pentagon approve such operation.
Yeah, just waiting for them bombs to fall, baby.
Yeah. So this organization, the Suvarov Union, together with some far-right Russian monarchies from New York and London,
right?
They recognized as the legitimate Tsar a former Russian Grand Duke Cyril, who was
Kirill the First or something.
Kirill the
right?
First,
Yeah.
Who was a Nazi sympathizer.
Yeah.
Do Americans pronounce it Kirill or Cyril?
Probably Cyril, but I know through readings of him as referred to as Kirill the First.
Yeah. So this involvement with these particular White Russians led to another kind of ridiculous thing, which is DAC's and Del Valle's involvement with a fake Knights of Malta organization.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. One led by a guy called Charles Pickle, who was a Nazi sympathizer in 1930s, and maintained relations with the White Russians. So there is some kind of a Russian tradition of the Knights of Malta.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, legitimate if you want to say so. I mean, I don't know. There are these orders that exist in Russia and have some lineage. But this is not one of them. This one was entirely fake, made up by this Pickle guy.
Awesome. Love it.
It was called the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem, Knights of Malta. It was headquartered in a small town called Shikshini, Pennsylvania. So Del Valle and all of the DAC guys became members.
Isn't Vlasic Pickles, are they from Pennsylvania as well?
I don't know. That guy's Croatian.
Yeah. Just wondering if there's a Pickle connection here. Are we paying attention?
Well, this guy's named Pickle.
He's named Pickle. I know, I'm really zeroing in on that.
Yeah. So a lot of generals became members of this particular Knights of Malta.
Mm-hmm.
For example,
the Pickle Knights.
George Stratemeyer, Charles Willoughby, of course, Boner Fellers.
Yeah, sure.
The whole gang were now Knights of Malta.
And this is not to be confused, by the way, with Boney Fuller, which is a UK kind of mystic and tactician kind of guy.
No,
part
this
of
is
the
Boner.
British Union of Fascists. This is a Boner Feller. Boner Fellers.
Yes. Yeah.
It's pronounced Boner, damn it.
Yeah. So there is a connection, Boris. You asked, is there some connection with some Chetniks? There is a connection here because one of the offshoots of these illegitimate Pickles Knights of Malta was later supported by King Peter II of Yugoslavia. So I imagine it's possible Kavaja was a member of one of the offshoots of this organization, or some people like that.
Well, if somebody knows, they should hit us up.
Yeah, family members.
If you have some personal knowledge or something, let us know. The Pickle Knights we're looking for.
Yeah. So now what's interesting about Del Valle and the gang is that although they're super anti-communist, on the level of the John Birch Society, they actually, because they are much more anti-Semitic openly, they actually don't believe that the Soviet Union is a real enemy and strong enough.
Okay.
They often would say how it's weak, the regimes are weak, the populations are rebellious, which support them. They say, for example, in Task Force, the communist regimes are weak and their people's rebellious. The only strength they possess is the faction within the American government, which puts the Soviet Union first. So they believe that the real enemy, which is kind of, interesting for them, the world they live in. The enemy is in New York City.
Interesting.
And those people there control both China, the famously Jew-controlled Mao regime,
right?
Yeah,
and the Soviet Union.
Yeah. Damn. Wow. Okay. This is very interesting. So because there's somehow, I'm still not. It still feels like there is a lot of overlap with kind of Dulles brother-led enterprises and stuff. But I guess the fact that they didn't have a particular loyalty to the CIA means they also weren't pulling Gellen's weight around either, right? So they didn't have this idea that there was going to be an imminent attack on Europe.
Not that they don't have a particular loyalty to CIA. CIA is a communist organization.
It's a communist organization, which is where Revelo was on that. And so this guy is probably more properly the origin of this. This is really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So they were doing open and not so open anti-Semitism in their publications. For example, in 1955, in Task Force, they write how the top advisors to President Eisenhower, including his brother Milton and also Nelson Rockefeller, exist merely to transmit orders headed down from higher sources, much as a messenger boy delivers a Western Union telegram.
Mm-hmm.
So these unseen masters, they write, to see these unseen masters or international conspirators as composed of any one racial group, as is so often charged, is wrong.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so it's wrong.
Okay.
But to the extent that some racial groups' representation in the world conspiracy is greater,
Okay.
because they are more astute at seizing opportunity than others, more avaricious in their greed for power, more skilled in the art of deception and intrigue, and more adept in their pursuits which concentrate the bulk of the world's wealth in their hands.
Man, he really hated the French.
Such observations were accurate. So it's true.
Damn.
I don't know why they even do the first part.
This is so funny.
Well, because, I'm sure they've had enough, parlor discussions with people who are like, well, you can't possibly think that the Jews control everything.
Yeah.
Well, and also,
And it's like, well, okay, fine. There are people that aren't Jews that are, but
there are some of the good ones.
Yeah.
There are good ones. But I think this is great too, because this is now a great, I love this. This is an argument that has now resurfaced very strongly through some of Candace Owens's recent videos. We're chatting before the show. But just like yesterday, she dropped a video that sounds very much like this. Like in the background of this now is her constant statement. Like, I swear, I have nothing against the Jewish people as a whole.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like just Jews. It's just that, it's
There's
just the ones.
mostly Jews.
It's the ones that are controlling everything from behind the curtains are the ones that I'm worried about.
course.
That's what this is.
Yes.
This is exactly that. Actually.
That's it.
Great.
So this is the kind of conspiratorial thinking they were very much into. In 1955, Eugene Pomeroy, the colonel, went on a trip to London, and he met a brave British woman patriot.
Oh.
Who had infiltrated
the rare woman patriot.
Yes, a woman patriot, who had infiltrated the 1952 London Conference of the World Association of Parliamentarians for World Government, also known as the United World Federalists.
Okay.
And what she saw there, and I guess photographs that picked up or something like that.
Sure.
Was
giant owl statue, sacrifice.
No, it was a map of the planet Earth. Which was divided. Actually, Coogan tells us that this map divided up the world into series of zones and regions with longitude and latitude lines duly noted. And
like states? Like fucking states?
No, not states.
Okay.
Let
him finish.
Sorry, I'm just so mad.
I guess this is the point. It was this World Federalist attempt to envision a rationally organized globe and not one split along pre-existing national political lines.
Oh, okay. I see. This is so it's a non-state. It's some crazy.
Yeah. So this is how the DAC makes conclusions here.
Yeah, okay.
So they saw that map and they saw that the United States were in this map split into 4 zones. So Pomeroy concludes this from this which he saw. He deduces this.
Okay.
He warns that a Mau chief could rule the South as commissar.
Yeah.
While the states from the Atlantic to the Rockies quite likely would be under the dictatorship of a Hak Filipinos, which while the Pacific Coast states in all likelihood could expect a Red Chinese as their overlord.
In this country?
So the Mau.
Yeah.
From Kenya.
Yeah.
God, I wish these guys had lived long enough to see Obama.
Yeah.
So the Mau, who, are fighting British imperialism in Kenya, are actually doing that so that they can eventually control large swaths of the globe.
Well, 1/4 of U.S.
We'll have a quarter of the U.S.
We'll have a Mau commissar.
Kind of sick,
under
actually.
the control of the Mau.
So there will be a Mau commissar. There will be
Nice.
Is it too late for this? Can we still do this?
Hak Filipino commissar, and there will be a Red Chinese commissar. I don't know the fourth part. Who's that? But I don't know. I guess it wasn't important.
Which part's controlled by the Mau? I'm so curious. I'm sorry.
I think did he say the South?
The South.
Okay. So the like the Black Belt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they also this plan wants to reduce an average American to somewhere on a level of an Australian bushman, and so on.
Jesus Christ!
This is their.
I hate these people. So
Yes,
much.
yes. I'm thinking now of all the ones that we've read that for some reason have been like, what do you want us to end up like Brazilians? We'll look like Brazilians. Like there's this crazy anxieties they have about being this or that other thing.
Yeah. Also, at times, Del Valle would quote from the protocols, of course.
Oh, yeah. Wait, which ones? Just checking.
The learned elders of Zion.
Yeah.
The protocols.
Yeah. So they loved the book written by the buddy John Beatty called Iron Curtain Over America, which was published in 1951. It was one of their main documents, basically, this book. The author, Beatty, was an English professor and former head of Southern Methodist University in Dallas. But also, he was in the army. He was military intelligence, G2. Officer from 41 to 47. I don't know if this is the origin of this story, but the Khazar story features heavily in this book.
Interesting. But this is early, so it's good to know.
51.
We'll put a pin in it.
Yeah. So
I'm pretty sure that's been around for I don't know.
We got to look into it.
Yeah.
Let's start with 51. Let's see where we go.
So the claim that I guess most of the Ashkenazi Jews are actually of this Khazar origin, which was a Turkic ethnicity in the Middle Ages, early Middle Ages, who had a state and then the state disappeared.
Yes.
Became a vassal of the Byzantium, I think. Vassal. And allegedly some of their elites converted to Judaism, although this is not completely sure.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure this Khazar conspiracy goes back to the 19th century, though.
By the way, Death Rage also had some connection with these Knights of Malta.
George Death Rage.
Because his sponsor was some guy who was one of the Knights of Malta. I think his last name was Kent. And he was...
Clock? Is that you?
No.
It's me, Pickle.
Yeah. He was...
Come join a fake order of Knights of Malta run by some weird Russian Nazi collaborators.
So that's the time.
Yeah, the knight who had connections with George Death Rage and was his sponsor was a guy called Tyler Kent. And he was a file clerk in the U.S. Embassy in London.
I said Clark. I was pretty close.
Yeah, clerk. He was a file clerk in the U.S. Embassy in London during the Second World War.
Okay.
And was giving information to the Axis powers, for which he then spent the rest of the time during the war in prison.
Yeah.
In Britain. But then after the war, he married rich and used his wife's fortune to finance various Nazis in America.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Was that Tyler Clark, you said? Tyler Kent.
Tyler Kent, yes. Who was a clerk.
I wonder which rich he married. If it's a Dior sister, friend, cousin, maybe.
He was a Hyatt, I think.
Oh, was he a Hyatt? Okay. All right.
Let me see. So, Common Sense, we mentioned, very anti-Semitic journal. They had a falling out with Del Valle.
Did they turn to communist?
Yes.
Awesome. Yes.
In a strange way, which, I mean, probably, I don't think it will surprise you. I think this was in 67.
Okay.
They ran a text that claimed how Stalin actually wasn't under the control of Jews.
Oh.
And how he almost liberated the Russian people from Jew Trotskyite and so on, Leninist and so on.
I see.
This is some kind of return to Russian patriotism or whatever, which is present among various fascists.
Oh yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
But this was too much for Del Valle, so he told him to fuck off.
So not a Yakian either, then probably.
He was not a Yakian, no. So by the way, the chairman of the Constitution Party, Curtis Dahl, would later be a leading figure in the Liberty Lobby. They formed it in 1960, I think. So
give me the name again. Sorry, of the party.
Constitution.
Oh, just Constitution Party. Okay.
Yes, very basic.
So they dropped the whole Defenders thing, and
Yeah.
that's still there, but it's running on the side.
So Del Valle wrote how they want to use their electoral work actually as a way to cover their paramilitary organizing. So they would like do various things officially that were about, I don't know, elections and
Sure.
so on.
Yeah.
And it was actually organizing their paramilitary connections and so on.
It's the classic guerrilla tactic of intentionally drawing attention to yourself.
Yes. And you know what they did when, in the classical Nazi move that we talked about before, you know what they did when they made this plan, how they will lie to everyone how they're doing a party and actually doing a paramilitary?
Wait until I pull up the sad trombone. All right, hit me.
They decided to divide U.S. into 4 zones,
It didn't even count.
just like they said the Jews are doing.
Right.
That's one of those Nazi things, you know? If you want to know what they're thinking about doing, check out what they think is being done to them now that isn't.
Mhm.
Usually it's their plan.
So Del Valle, this is how he explained his strategy of having both a party and a paramilitary. My struggle is twofold. Number 1, strictly legal, constitutional, political efforts to restore constitutional government. And number 2, alerting all white Christian Americans to the nature of the enemy within and urging that they use Article 2 of the Bill of Rights to arm and organize for the defense of their homes, families, community, state, and country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, okay. Cool.
That's it.
Load up on guns. Let's do it.
Yeah. So he was in connection with all kinds of guys. The KKK, Christian Identity, the Minutemen, of course, the Pew.
Mhm.
He basically, I mean, what the Pew was doing was what Del Valle wanted.
Yes.
Right.
The Sons of Confederate Veterans and basically all the groups. I mean, ANP as well.
Yeah. Wow.
And he was a big fan of military coups. So, for example, he, in a 1966 letter to American rightist Mary Davidson, he says, the solution to American problems was clear. The only way to cut the Gordian knot is by a military coup d'etat.
Mm-hmm.
There was some media attention towards the popularity of basically fascism in the American military. Like Washington Post wrote about, okay, they didn't say fascism, but they wrote a text about how specifically Major General Edwin Walker was politicizing his troops with right-wing propaganda. And the same article mentioned also Del Valle as well, mentioning how Del Valle is on the brink of calling openly for an armed insurrection.
Yeah.
This article and the thinking then of the liberals who were upset by this they were making parallels between what General Walker and Del Valle were doing with the OAS in France, which was the pro fascist hard right secret military organization. Basically, I mean, it's called the secret military organization.
Yeah.
Who wanted to kill and tried to assassinate de Gaulle a few times. So there were people who were thinking that Del Valle and the gang are doing the same thing in America. And I think they probably were. I mean, I'm sure they were fans of OS in France. Also, Coogan mentions now, in this context, he actually mentions the John Franklin letters.
Oh, great.
Which
coming soon.
Coogan at the time, I guess, didn't know that they were written by Reville Oliver.
Yeah, that's still not officially historical canon yet. That's these are. I mean, it almost certainly is. Like, it's named after his own relatives. It sounds like him.
Yeah.
William Luther Pierce thought it was him. Luther Pierce's biographer thinks it's him. I mean,
yeah.
There's no reason to think it's not him. It's just we don't have that smoking gun that we had with M.A.R. Barker's Serpent's Walk. You know,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
But Coogan mentions that book in the context of this, like the thinking about, on the one hand, coup d'etat, on the other hand, organizing a guerrilla force that's supposed to fight against a communist invasion, like a stay behind, but then again, maybe against the traitors who are currently in power, because they believe, the CIA is controlled by Jews. So
every good fascist needs a day of the rope.
Yeah.
It's got to be in there somewhere.
So a story that they really paid attention to is kind of ridiculous. It's a military maneuver from 1963, which was called Operation Water Moccasin.
Okay.
And it was like, I guess, a very anti-communist counterinsurgency drill by the American military that involved some 2,000 to 3,000 troops somewhere in Georgia. But because it said that it will also have some foreign military participation, the Del Valle boys thought that this is a communist conspiracy to take the control of American patriots by the UN.
I see. I see. This is actually answering some questions about Revelo and where he got, I think, some of these ideas from. Yeah.
Although, I mean, clearly nothing like this happened. They would continue to use this term water moccasin as if it means this. The UN, you controlling the US military to take control over patriotic Americans and so on. So they would mention that a bunch of times.
Nice.
All right. Adding it to our Tenapod lexicon.
Yes, definitely.
Whenever I say water moccasin, what I mean is the UN is going to take over all of our schools.
The UN is controlling the military.
The military's going to move for the Pineys any day. Take New Jersey. Give it to the Czechs.
The operation that they're performing is practice for what they're going to do.
So Del Valle was also in contact with some of your Fritz, your
my friends,
your friends, which is
one?
the Colonel William P. Gale.
Oh, I thought you meant Boris here. Okay.
And also, of course, what is his name? Wesley Swift.
Yeah. Swift and Gale. California Rangers. They were the Christian identity guys. They were the ones that helped us make that final transition into total nuttiness. They gave us a lot of good UFO shit, too. They thought that the Russians were never going to make it to space. And then once they made it to space, thought they'd never get to Venus. And then, died.
And they were sad by the Venera probes.
Yeah, they were very sad.
He was in contact with both of them, although he didn't like they were extremely anti-Catholic because they were Christian identity guys.
Yeah.
And Del Valle was very Catholic.
Yeah.
But he still, for example, for Gale, he said Gale was doing a fine job of another sort out there, preparing for the inevitable clash between Christianity and the anti-Christians.
That would be the California Rangers.
Yes. Yeah. But as Coogan says, there is also a suggestion that Gale was acting on orders from some unidentified group above him. And I think the thought here is that maybe, I mean, Coogan doesn't say this, but maybe there was some thinking that Del Valle actually was ahead of an actual, like that what he proposed was established in some way. And that the Minutemen, not the ones that the Pew had, but the kind of a larger organization coordinating all of these fascist armed people who are anti-communist in America did exist, and then the Del Valle somehow controlled it. For example, I mean, there's no evidence for this, but for example, when writing to someone about Gale, Del Valle says, this is a person that is receiving this letter from Del Valle in 1963 is called West Vichy, I guess. So he says to Vichy, your spy did a good job of reporting on Gale's activity, but came to erroneous conclusions. Gale is charged with doing exactly what he is doing, even to the collection of donations. It does not follow that the money is for Gale, and to say so is a libel. The system is set up. The system as set up is to be self-financing, to prevent infiltration and control by the bankers. Whatever measures can be taken to cover the process of preparing white Christian Americans to defend their country, their homes, and their families against the now imminent red takeover is up to local organizers, as the movement is completely autonomous within the premises postulated by the High Command.
Interesting.
It's just getting to that kind of Lewis Beam territory, maybe somehow.
Yeah. So
cells.
Coogan also says in one footnote, one question involves the possible role of the International Services of Information Foundation, based in Baltimore, Maryland, and headed by an ex-OSS man named Julius Louis Amos. Now, this is interesting. This is an organization that also on its board had General Boner Fellers. But what's interesting about Julius Louis Amos, who was an ex-OSS guy, is that he's the first guy who used the term leaderless resistance.
Well, that's why it sounds so fucking familiar, because this is what he's describing.
And it was taken over by Louis Beam, that you just mentioned.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense. Oh no, they got Ray with the Havana syndrome.
Yeah.
He's going to go down like Biden. We're going to have to paint him orange.
Yeah. I think that this Julius Louis Amos, whatever his name is, was also not fond of CIA. He was more like hardline than them.
Okay.
And probably in that sense was the ally of YM.
Sure. Okay. And this is Julius with like a U. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Julius. So you even have a leaderless resistance here.
Yeah. Pedro, taking us through.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll finally go briefly over the fucking Brits.
Race of beauty, race of light.
That's our Brits.
Yeah, so the League of Empire Loyalists, what a horrific name for
it
is
really.
very Star Wars though.
Yes, it's evil.
It
It was started almost at the same time when the AC was in 54. AC was 53. They also had lots of ex-military people involved.
Yeah.
And the leader was a guy called...
Darth Saluzan.
Greetings.
No, it was a guy called Arthur Keith Chesterton, better known as AK. He was the cousin of the more famous G.K. Chesterton.
Yeah.
A Catholic English writer. You might recall that he was mentioned in the debate between Jordan Peterson and Zizek.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Oof.
That's when Zizek did... I'm not a fan of Zizek, but Zizek did like better Christianity than Peterson did there. And kind of impressed the Peterson,
Yeah.
who went straight into a coma after that.
Yes.
But
in Solzhenitsyn.
yeah. So AK Chesterton, he was once in the 30s, he was a member of the Black Shirts of Oswald Mosley's
All right.
British Union of Fascists.
Where Boney Fuller was a member.
Okay. But what happened was that he left the British Union of Fascists in 1938, and then fought against the Nazis with the British military, which means that he wasn't a collaborator, although at all fascist. So he wasn't like, he didn't have these problems that Mosley had. And,
Right. Sure.
He was a patriot and wasn't imprisoned and so on.
Okay.
So he combined right-wing Tory empire loyalism with conspiratorial anti-Semitism when he founded this group. It was basically a complete counterpart of the Defenders of American Constitution. And they saw each other like this, and the two guys, the Chesterton and Delia, were in correspondence regularly for 20 years.
Yeah. Okay.
So completely the same ideology, I mean, just applied, in British circumstances. The monarchy and so on. But what's interesting about the League of Empire Loyalists is that their members were people like John Tyndall, Colin Jordan, Martin Webster, John Bean. So
episode 1.
Yes,
episode 1.
Episode 1. All of these members would all of these people except Colin Jordan would later be leaders of National Front.
Yeah.
Colin Jordan wanted something more openly Nazi.
Yes.
So he started. He had
could tell from his speeching.
He had the British Movement, which was an openly Nazi group, and was a mentor to David Matt.
Also married rich.
Married rich,
Briefly.
yes. To Dior, I guess. Yes. Briefly. I think she left him for Tyndall? No, she left Tyndall for...
Left Tyndall for Jordan.
Yeah.
You're no Fuhrer, says Dior.
Yeah.
That was the headline.
So the journalist George Thayer, who interviewed leading members of this group, basically summarized the program this way. British sovereignty should be maintained at all costs. That's number one. Number two, instead of liquidating its empire, England should continue to build it. Okay. And number three, third world immigration to England must be stopped. So that's the program.
Right.
And unlike Mosley, Chesterton really was anti-European. So Mosley, his new group, what's it called? The
British Union.
that's the pre-war. It was like the union movement.
Yes. Bravo.
They were extremely like pro-European, like Europe a nation was their slogan. They worked closely with Italians and so on.
Yeah.
These people were like, fuck that, that's all Jews. UN, EU, NATO. We don't want any of that. What we want is the British Empire.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going with the classics.
Yeah. So Pomeroy went to visit them there in 1954, and he reported back that according to the League of Empire Loyalists, the Jews seem to exercise even greater influence here over the British Parliament and politicians than they do at home in the US.
Yeah. Okay.
So these people believe that Winston Churchill and his son Randolph, along with Anthony Eden, were the abject slaves of Bernie Baruch.
Okay. Baruch comes up all the time in like interwar and early post-war Nazi shit in the US too. They're obsessed with him and his relationship to Roosevelt and shit. Or, yeah. Yep.
So
sitting there eating cucumber sandwiches.
Let me see
reading the protocols to each other.
Just want to find the thing I want to read to you. What is this? Oh, fucking Nazis. Their website sucks.
All Nazi websites are bullshit. Yes.
I can't read properly from it. It's either...
Is it in Schwarzwald?
I have to move the thing while I read. So, the League of Empire Loyalists had their own like task force. Task force was the bulletin of the AC. They had their own newsletter bulletin, which was called Candor. Actually, is called because it still fucking exists.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right.
Although published very irregularly, they say. So allegedly, J.R.R. Tolkien was subscribed to Candor.
Okay.
They say for 20 years.
Oh, well.
This information comes from the British fascists themselves. Or like, okay, I guess maybe not only British, but it comes from a wealthy South African banker and horrible racist called Stephen Goodson, who claims that at some point in the 1970s he bought the Tolkien collection of Candor.
Okay.
And he wrote a text about it, which I have here. I think it was published by like the National Front or something like this.
Okay.
And what may be interesting, we can learn a little bit about the League of Empire Loyalists, but also possibly, allegedly, maybe about Tolkien.
Did he allegedly leave like margin notes?
No notes. He underscored some parts, which I'm going to read to you.
These are okay. So these are Tolkien's underscored,
allegedly,
like, allegedly.
According to this fascist who claims he has this at his home.
All right.
Africa is not peopled by black Europeans, but it is a continent full of tribes mentally and morally at the dawn of history. Self-government does not mean democracy. Liberia and Abyssinia are two warning lights. African hegemony will lead to the suicide of the white community in East and Central Africa and to the ruin of African hopes of sustained progress. This is from 1956. Then, the concentration of the power of the press has long since made a mockery of whatever degree of informed democracy we may have once known. From 1956 again.
Okay.
The true equation is democracy equals government by world financiers. The main mark of modern government is that we do not know who governs, de facto any more than de jure. We see the politician and not his backer, still less the backer of the backer, or what is most important of all, the banker of the backer. Thrown above all, in a manner without parallel in all past, is the wheeled prophet of finance, swaying all men living by a sort of magic, and delivering oracles in a language not understood of the people. From 1956 again. There should only be one source of money, one fountainhead from which flows a nation's blood to vitalize commerce and industry, ensure economic equity and justice, and safeguard the welfare of the people. In other words, it has always been and still is our contention that the prerogative of creating and issuing the money of the nation should be restored to the state.
Okay.
I don't know if this sounds familiar. Does the word usury ring a bell?
I mean,
So both the Defenders of American Constitution and the League of Empire Loyalists together, they did a campaign to free Ezra Pound from St. Elizabeth's mental hospital.
I was about to ask if we were heading with the Ezra Pound shit or the old biblical gold standard of more like Christian identity, maybe even Pele kind of world.
In 1967, National Front was founded in Great Britain, and the parent organization was the League of Empire Loyalists, which fused with the British National Party, a different one from the later one.
Oh.
The Greater Britain Movement in the Racial Preservation Society.
Oh.
And A.K. Chesterton became the first leader of the National Front. He later left National Front because he didn't like the open Nazi stuff they started doing, allegedly.
Mm-hmm. The Racial Preservation Society.
Yes.
Talk about candor, am I right?
Yeah. So one thing that I forgot to say is that, of course, Del Valle was a big supporter of Senator Joe McCarthy.
Sure, of course. Who wouldn't be?
They, the DAC, were part of the organization of a big Madison Square Garden rally in '54.
Our favorite kind.
Oh.
In support of McCarthy's presidential campaign.
Nice.
It failed. It was considered a failure. There was only 13,000 people attending. This is at the time when Yockey also worked for McCarthy.
That's crazy.
Writing, I think, speeches for him.
Damn.
And Madol, the leader of the National Renaissance Party, was also present in this rally.
Yeah.
Organized by Del Valle. When the Willis Carto started National Youth Alliance.
Yeah. I think,
when Willis Carto started National Youth Alliance, Del Valle became a member of their advisory board, together with Revilo P. Oliveira.
Right. Okay.
And they were also in correspondence, the two of them. So both the British group and the American group were linked to the same White Russian circles. And there was a task force correspondent from London was one of these White Russians, a guy called George Knuffer, who was born in St. Petersburg and was a leading figure in the White Russian monarchist community in London. Knuffer helped lead the Mlado Rossi, the Union of Young Russians, a far-right, extremely anti-Semitic political organization, which had a kind of a paramilitary wing, which was called Russian Revolutionary Forces. What did I want to say about them? There was some controversy that is connected to these connections with White Russians and Del Valle crew.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wait. I just realized when you said there's some controversy about these guys, it just hit me that I was like, oh, I wonder what it's going to be. And then it hit me that we've just been listening to an hour and 20 minutes of how he's involved in every fucking Nazi part of the world, and the U.S. military intelligence.
Well, this was internal controversy.
Right. Yeah, this is...
So they decided they will denounce a competing White Russian group.
Oh, okay.
The text was written by a guy that we mentioned before, a British guy called Peter J. Huxley Blythe. Huxley Blythe was also, I think, an intelligence military guy who was a member of Mosley's Black Shirts.
Yeah. Wait a minute. No, this person he was an older person at this time, no?
I'm actually, now that I said it, I'm not sure if he was a member of the Black Shirts or a sympathizer, and then he was a member of the post-war British Union movement, or whatever it was called, led by Oswald Mosley.
Okay.
And then he met when Yockey was in Britain, talking with Mosley. Him and Huxley Blythe really liked each other.
Yeah.
And then Yockey had a falling out with Mosley, left him, and started a group called the European Liberation Front. And Huxley Blythe went with him. and was also with him wrote the Proclamation of London, which was their program.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay.
So later on, Huxley Blight would leave Yockey, accusing him of possibly working for the Soviet intelligence, because he was a hard anti-communist and didn't like the term.
The new normal for Yockey. The third way.
So Huxley Blight also wrote an article that Del Valle completely adopted as his own stance.
Yeah.
And this was the one that we mentioned, that CIA is run by communists.
Okay. Okay. The year that we're still in
50s. This is 50s, yes.
Excellent. That's great. That really helps narrow that down.
So Huxley Blight also wrote this text and published it in Task Force, which attacked a group called the National Alliance of Russian Solidarists, the NTS, which was a group founded in Belgrade, actually, I think, before the Second World War.
Which is not
I think
Russia.
I do know about the Solidarists. I think I mentioned them in the Monsiatsky episode.
Okay.
So these people who are like American military intelligence don't like the Solidarists because Solidarists cooperated with the CIA and the CIA are communists.
Right, of course. Of course.
And the other reason why Russians didn't like them was this is now the possible Banderas connection, but not really, is that the Solidarists actually had a plan of like recognizing Ukrainian nationhood or something like this. Like, and actually their emblem, they use the
trident. That's the Russians. They use the trident. Yeah. You and I actually were talking about that months ago. Yeah.
Okay.
So they wrote this, that they are communists working for the CIA, and the Solidarists were really pissed off. So they were obliged actually to publish a kind of I guess their rebuttal. Yeah. So that happened as well. And that's very tied to the guy who was for a time close to Yockey. Yeah. He died, I don't know if in the 90s or maybe even 2000s, this Blight guy.
Okay.
And Coogan interviewed him at some point.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
And at some point, Coogan says that he was a mentor to Colin Jordan.
Okay.
Well, I just realized that this was it.
Oh, there we go.
Free holy.
All right.
Yeah. So maybe we can find the conclusion.
Yeah. I mean, this is like the ultimate trivia answer to the Tenepod game show questions that we started this arc with. Pedro del Valle really ties
Del Valle
kind of
seems
all
to
of them together.
Get a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, so what we had here is like had pre-war things like Joe, like that True guy.
Yeah, James True.
Death Rage. Yeah. Pelly.
Yeah. That's like the Silver Age.
Yeah, the Silver Age.
Yeah. Then, he knows fucking Prince Borghese.
Yeah.
He says that he knew Mussolini.
And the Contessa Guardabasti.
Exactly.
Whose name was like Helen or something. Or Nancy.
He knows Liberty Lobby people. Through that, I'm sure he knew William Pierce.
Yeah.
Yep.
He knows Rockwell A&P. He knows Renaissance Party people. He knows National States Rights Party people.
Yeah.
Work with them. He knows
American Legion. He's all up in that.
Swift and Gale.
Swift and Gale. Yeah.
Swift and Gale.
Christian Identity. This is also why this time period, the 50s, is so important.
Yeah.
It's when you're starting to get out of their Silver Age, and then we're getting the kind of movements that we now know.
Yeah, when they
Christian
divide
Identity
up, into the various the freaky menagerie that we have today.
And of course, Lieutenant General Pedro del Valle is still an honored member of the United States Marine Corps.
That's right.
He has a scholarship named after him. He's for Hispanic troops.
That's correct.
He was the first Hispanic general, lieutenant general in the U.S. military.
Yeah,
and he did great things, breaking down barriers.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And there's maybe we'll leave us with a little snippet. some current Marine talking about the
legacy.
The legacy. Well, talking about like, the opportunities with this scholarship or whatever. But it is great that the first like Hispanic lieutenant general is just a complete Nazi lunatic.
I mean, probably a Spanish guy. I mean, like,
I mean, I think if I remember from his biography, I think his dad was born in Spain. I mean, he was a Spanish colonial administrator.
Yeah.
You don't get that for having.
So there are a lot of white
blood,
Puerto Ricans,
you know what I mean?
too.
Of course,
it's not.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I bet he's not even spicy white.
No,
I bet he's like regular steak and potatoes type.
Yeah,
unseasoned, please. Let's hear this fucking thing, and we'll
all right.
See you next week, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. So to close, some thoughts about the legacy of Pedro del Valle.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
See you later.
Bye.
Today I'm going to be talking to you about the Hispanic Heritage Month and what it means to me serving as a Latina in uniform. So I grew up in Santa Monica, California, and if you know the area, it's not heavily populated with a lot of Hispanic culture. I have enjoyed all the time I've spent in the Marine Corps, especially representing this uniform as a female Hispanic. It means a lot to me to be able to celebrate here and to show my pride and to represent my traditions as a Mexican. So as a recruiter, I do also talk about different scholarships. One of the scholarships is in honor of Pedro del Valle. So he is the first Lieutenant General, Hispanic, serving in the United States Marine Corps. He was the first to reach that rank. And that is a scholarship for 2-, 3-, and 4-year universities at one of the 3 Hispanic universities. So they are outside of the state of California. If you want some more information on that scholarship, hit me up, let me know.
Hey there, all you free people enjoying your free episodes from The Empire Never Ended. Maybe scoot on over to patreon.com/tenepod and become a patron. We publish 3 additional premium episodes there alongside the 2 freebies each month. We're on Twitter too, also at Tenepod, but our Patreon is really where it's at. See you there, maybe?
They'll wake up one day and say, there will be.